One of the most enigmatic figures in Skyward Sword is the ancient hero who served alongside the goddess in the War of Demise. He's mentioned a couple times, mainly around the wing ceremony, by Zelda and some of the teachers, but that's about all we have. For starters, there is no mention of him during the backstory cutscene at the beginning when it's talking about Hylia sending the people into Skyloft. It's not exactly secret information, so I feel like that's something that would have been included. And then there's the fact that we never really get anything about him from characters who were actually around in the time where he would have been alive, like the dragons or even Impa. In fact, Demise straight up contradicts the existence of this character when he says that Link is the first person to stand up to him. If you're already familiar with theories about this character, then you've probably heard the one saying that it's a time loop, that the Link you play as in Skyward Sword is that ancient hero. But considering how weird Skyward Sword's time travel mechanics are, I don't want to lean on that. Today, I'm proposing an original theory, and all I ask is that you hear me out, because it might seem a bit weird. I propose that the hero we hear about in Skyward Sword is in fact the Link from the original Legend of Zelda game. Now, those familiar with my theories might know that I tend to treat the Hyrule story as more guidelines than rules. And you may also know that my favorite solutions are the ones that solve multiple problems. So let's start off by explaining the problems I have with Zelda 1's current placement. A pretty big one is with the character of Ganon. Given the placement, he should either be fused with Yuga, dead, or completely insane. And as you can see, he's none of those. He's not using any wall merging powers, he's very much alive, never mentioned him needing to be revived, and he's able to coordinate an attack on Hyrule. But by far the biggest problem, and the nail in the coffin for me when it comes to this timeline placement, is how it treats the story of Adventure of Link. Now, the plot synopsis of that backstory, for those who need a refresher, is that before the events of the first Zelda game, the Princess Zelda of that era was cursed to sleep, like Sleeping Beauty, and a decree was given that every female born into the royal family will be named Zelda. But my problem with that is, if this supposedly happened at the end of the timeline, as the Historia suggests, then there'd be no reason to make that decree, because it was already a tradition. It makes much more sense to put it earlier up in the timeline. Well, after this train of thought, my initial instinct was to put this game right after Skyward Sword, because Skyward Sword is about the founding of Hyrule. Considering we're in Hyrule in these games, that's what makes the most sense. But then, something else that I'd always thought was weird came back into my mind. In Skyward Sword, if you do the Thunder Dragon's lightning round, it's possible to get the Hylian shield, with name and crest and all, the Hylian shield. One more time. You get the Hylian shield, crest and all, from a dragon who existed in the ancient past. Meaning, at some point before Skyward Sword, there was already a Kingdom of Hyrule that we've never seen in game. Or have we? Okay. It's one thing to prove that there was a Hyrule before Skyward Sword. It's another to claim it's from a game we've played. So, how about I give some evidence for it? And that evidence comes in the form of what convinced me it shouldn't be where it already was. Ganon. In Zelda 1, you don't need the Master Sword to beat Ganon. Sure, there's the magic sword, but it's not the same thing, and even if it was, you could go through the entire game without getting it. It's completely optional. No, I believe something makes this version of Ganon different from almost every other in the series. I think this is a Ganon from before Demise's time. Okay, quick warning, my explanation's gonna go into heavy speculation territory in a minute, so before that, I just want to give another explanation that might be a bit easier to digest. Okay, cool, here we go. Now, names and appearances being shared between different characters who play the same role across multiple games is a weirdly specific trend in the series. Probably the most recognizable example of this phenomena is Impa, a high-ranking leader of the Sheikah clan every time someone bearing her name appears. However, what I find to be weird is Beetle, who appears as a shopkeeper with almost the same design at several very different points in time across the series. If someone as minuscule as just a random shopkeeper can get this treatment, I don't see why someone with a position as powerful as Ganon and Ganondorf wouldn't be the same to some extent. It's also been pretty heavily established that Zelda characters tend to look a lot like their ancestors. This can be seen with literally every version of Zelda, but also characters like the Linebacks in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. And now that I've shown this can be a very plausible possibility, it's speculation time! Okay, so stick with me here. In this timeline I'm proposing, the first Ganon in the first Zelda game would have been the Demon King before Demise. This implies that Demise would have taken over that very same position. So Demise curses Link and Zelda to say that his hatred will reincarnate and follow them down through all of history, basically. So what if, and again, this is pure brain bullet spray, just throwing out, seeing what sticks, what if that incarnation of hatred includes the Demon King before him, Ganon? After all, he never got revived. His minions failed to do that in Zelda 2. That was their whole mission, and they failed. Again, I'm not really too sure where I was going with this. Maybe one of you watching can have a better idea than I do, but I think it's interesting. But no, I feel like my explanation before getting into this whole speculation thing was reasonable. So I'm gonna stick with this. It's just I wanted to float those ideas out there because they were floating around in my head. I just didn't know what to do with them. Okay, thanks for letting me ramble. Speculation time over. Okay, I've rambled on for a while now, so it's time to tie all this back to where it originally came from. How does Zelda 1 tie into the ancient hero from before Skyward Sword? Well, if you remember what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, I don't think that there was a hero who fought alongside Hylia in the War of Demise. I just think Skyward Sword straight up refutes that after it sets it up. So, according to this theory, the hero in the first Zelda game was from before the War with Demise. So, the legends are about him. The legends about that first hero got passed down, and somewhere in there probably got conflated. Or maybe they never were related. After all, he did have the Triforce of Courage in Zelda 2. Either way, it's not perfect, but I like what this theory does. Yes, from a timeline sense, but also from a narrative sense. Because now, everything in the series can be traced back to just one random good deed that some kid did, the entire legacy of the hero. And I think that's pretty cool and represents the themes of the series and the character of Link really well. But yeah, thanks for indulging me. I think I've gone on long enough. So I'm the Haro Historian. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna go touch grass. See ya.